I never imagined that a wedding, a celebration of love, would turn into the scene of my worst nightmare. My cruel mother-in-law stepped forward and, without hesitation, slammed her leg into my pregnant belly. A sharp, blinding pain shot through me as I screamed and collapsed to the floor, clutching my stomach. Gasps filled the room, but no one stopped her. And then, just as I thought the worst had happened, something shocking unfolded, something that no one in that ballroom saw coming. My name is Nora Bennett, and I am 28 years old. If you had asked me a year ago what my life would look like now, I would have painted a picture of happiness, a loving husband, a peaceful home, and the excitement of motherhood. But life has a way of surprising you. Some surprises are beautiful, like finding out I was pregnant with twins. Others, well, they shake you to your very core. I wasn't born into wealth. My childhood was simple, filled with warmth and love, even if money was always tight. My parents worked hard. My father was a supermarket manager, and my mother cleaned houses in the wealthier neighborhoods of Boston. I learned early that the world treats people differently based on their last name and their bank balance. But I never let that define me. Then I met Ethan Carter. He was everything I never expected, a man born into privilege yet grounded and kind. Our love was real, the kind that didn't care about social status. A year ago, we got married, and I thought I had found my fairy tale. But fairy tales often come with villains. In my case, that villain was Victoria Carter, my mother-in-law, a woman who wore elegance like armor and used her power to control everyone around her. From the moment Ethan introduced me to his family, she made it clear, I was not welcome. At first, it was subtle, backhanded compliments, dismissive smiles, cold glances across the dinner table. But as time passed, she became bolder. She believed that wealth and power gave her the right to manipulate, to dictate who belonged and who didn't. And in her eyes, I was an outsider, an inconvenience. Then there was Lauren Carter, Ethan's sister. She had been raised under Victoria's shadow, molded into the perfect heiress, privileged, entitled, and just as cruel as her mother. While Ethan tried to shield me from their judgment, he wasn't always there to see what they truly were. For the first few months of our marriage, I ignored their hostility. I believed that if I was patient, they would accept me. But everything changed the day I found out I was pregnant. When Ethan and I saw the ultrasound, our world shifted. 2 tiny heartbeats. Twins. Ethan was overjoyed, already talking about names and nursery colors. I was nervous but excited. It should have been the happiest time of my life. But Victoria saw my pregnancy as a threat. To her, I wasn't just an unwanted wife. I was now carrying the next generation of the Carter family. And she wasn't about to let an outsider raise her grandchildren. Her visits became more frequent, her words sharper. You need guidance, dear. Raising Carter children is a responsibility, not a hobby. Lauren wasn't any better. She would smirk, hand resting on her designer dress, and say, Are you sure you're ready for this? The Carter name comes with expectations. I should have walked away, but I told myself it didn't matter. Ethan loved me. Our babies were safe. Then, Lauren announced her wedding. A grand affair, planned with the kind of extravagance that only old money could afford. And I, the unwanted Carter by marriage, was expected to attend. What I didn't know was that this wedding would change everything. That was the day my world shattered. That was the day Victoria showed me just how far she was willing to go. I didn't want to go. Every part of me knew that walking into Lauren's wedding meant stepping into a battlefield where I was already outnumbered. But this wasn't just any wedding. It was a Carter wedding, an event so extravagant that it felt like royalty gathering for a coronation. Ethan tried to reassure me before he left for his business trip. Don't let them get to you, Nora, he said, cupping my face in his hands. I'll be back soon. Just get through the night, and then we'll put all this behind us. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to think that I could endure a few hours of forced smiles and polite conversation. But deep down, I knew better. The moment I arrived at the Beacon Hill estate, I felt it. The shift in the air, the weight of 1,000 silent judgments. The venue was breathtaking. A historic mansion draped in crystal chandeliers, tables adorned with white orchids, gold-rimmed plates, and the soft hum of a string quartet playing in the background. Guests moved through the ballroom like actors in an expensive play, each one perfectly styled, every conversation dripping with wealth and influence. I wasn't part of this world, and they knew it. Victoria spotted me the second I walked in. Dressed in a deep emerald gown, she radiated control, her expression unreadable as she made her way toward me. Nora, you made it, she said smoothly, her eyes scanning me like I was a stain on an otherwise flawless evening. I wasn't sure if you'd have the energy. Pregnancy can be exhausting. Her words were meant to sound concerned, but I knew better. It wasn't concern. It was a reminder. You are weak. You don't belong here. I forced a smile. I'm feeling fine, thank you. Her lips curved just slightly. Good. Because tonight isn't about you, dear. It's about family. She leaned in slightly, her voice dropping lower. Real Carter family. Before I could respond, Lauren swept into the room, radiant in her designer wedding gown. She looked beautiful, perfect even. But the moment she saw me, her smile tightened. Oh, you came, she said, as if my presence was an inconvenience. I wasn't sure you'd find a dress appropriate for an event like this. A few nearby guests chuckled softly. I gritted my teeth. I had expected this, but that didn't make it hurt any less. I wanted to leave. I wanted to walk out of that ballroom and never look back. But I had come for Ethan, for the family we were building together. So I stayed. As the night went on, the whispers grew louder. The glances more obvious. I could feel their eyes on me, watching, judging. Then came the moment that changed everything. Victoria stepped forward, a champagne flute in hand, and raised it for a toast. To Lauren, my beautiful daughter, and to the Carter family legacy that will continue for generations to come. She turned slightly, her gaze locking onto mine. Because a family is only as strong as the people we choose to bring into it. Her meaning was clear. I wasn't one of them. I felt my chest tighten, heat rising to my face. I couldn't sit through this any longer. I needed to leave. I turned, ready to walk away, but before I could take a step, Victoria's voice cut through the air. Where do you think you're going? I froze. The room went silent. Then, Victoria Carter did something I never expected. She took a single step forward, then lifted her foot and kicked me. Hard. Right in the stomach. Pain exploded through me. A sharp, tearing agony that stole the air from my lungs. I gasped, clutching my belly, as my knees buckled beneath me. I heard gasps, the clinking of glasses as guests turned to watch in horror. I hit the ground hard, my body curled protectively around my stomach. My babies. Oh, God, my babies. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My vision blurred, my mind screaming in panic. Then, I heard Lauren's laughter. Oh, please, she drawled, swirling the champagne in her glass. Don't be so dramatic. It was just a little push. I thought you'd be tougher than this. A few nervous chuckles echoed through the room. Some guests lowered their eyes, others turned away, too afraid to intervene. No one helped me. Not one person. But someone was watching. David Walker, the journalist covering the wedding, had seen everything. And as I struggled to sit up, he made a decision. He pulled out his phone and called 911. There's been an assault, he said quietly, stepping away from the crowd. A pregnant woman has been attacked. I have it all on video. Pain radiated through my stomach, sharp and unrelenting. My breathing was shallow, and my hands instinctively cradled my belly. The twins. Were they okay? Were they still safe? I wanted to scream, to move, but fear kept me frozen. The room around me felt surreal, a grand ballroom, chandeliers sparkling overhead, and yet, here I was, on the cold marble floor, gasping for air. And all around me, Boston's elite simply watched, unsure whether to intervene or pretend they hadn't seen a thing. Victoria stood above me, her face unreadable. She had just kicked her pregnant daughter-in-law in front of hundreds of people, yet there wasn't a trace of remorse. If anything, she looked amused. Lauren, standing beside her, smirked. You always were overly sensitive, she said, taking a sip of her champagne as if nothing had happened. I clenched my jaw, willing myself to stay strong. But before I could react, the doors to the grand ballroom burst open. Boston police. Nobody move. Gasps filled the room as two officers strode inside, their expressions unreadable but commanding. Detective Ryan Collins was the first to speak. His voice rang loud and clear, cutting through the tension like a knife. Victoria Carter, you are under arrest for aggravated assault on a pregnant woman. A stunned silence followed his words. The crowd parted instinctively as the officers approached Victoria. She blinked, her carefully curated composure momentarily slipping. What? She said, voice sharp with disbelief. That's absurd. Detective Collins remained unmoved. We have a recorded statement and video evidence of your actions. My heart pounded as I slowly turned my head and saw him, David Walker, the journalist, standing off to the side, phone in hand. He met my gaze and gave me the smallest nod. He had been watching. He had seen everything. And he had made sure someone finally did something. Victoria scoffed. This is a mistake. Do you know who I am? The officer behind Collins stepped forward, Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell, whose cold, steady glare didn't waver. You are a woman who just kicked her pregnant daughter-in-law in front of a room full of witnesses, she said. And you're going to jail. The ballroom erupted into whispers. Lauren stepped forward, her smirk faltering for the first time. This is ridiculous, she snapped. It was an accident. My mother didn't mean anything by it. You can't just... Lauren Carter, you are also under arrest, Collins interrupted, cutting through her protest. We have enough evidence to charge you as well. The color drained from Lauren's face. For what? I didn't do anything. Oh, really? Lieutenant Mitchell pulled out her phone and played back a recording. Her own voice echoed through the room. Oh, please. Don't be so dramatic. It was just a little push. I thought you'd be tougher than this. A chill ran down my spine hearing her words again. The whispers turned to outrage. Some guests stepped back, shaking their heads. Others pulled out their phones, taking videos. Victoria's jaw clenched, her mask of control finally slipping. This is preposterous. We're Carters. You can't do this to us. Detective Collins gave her an unimpressed look. We just did. Then he pulled out a pair of handcuffs. The ballroom fell into dead silence. The officer behind Victoria reached for her wrists. She resisted. Don't touch me, she snapped, voice venomous. I will have your badge for this. Ma'am, don't make this more difficult than it has to be, the officer warned. You are under arrest. You have the right to remain silent. Victoria lunged forward. For a split second, it felt like the entire room held its breath. She was moving toward me, toward the woman she had just attacked, as if she could somehow undo everything, silence everything. But the officers were faster. They grabbed her arms, restraining her before she could get any closer. Lauren, now fully panicked, turned wildly to the guests. Are you really going to let them do this? She shrieked. Do something. Stop them. But no one moved. Not one person. These people had lived in Victoria's shadow for years, whispering about her behind closed doors, but never daring to challenge her. But now they were seeing her downfall. And none of them wanted to go down with her. Lauren let out a strangled sob as the officer snapped the handcuffs onto her wrists. No, this isn't happening, she wailed, thrashing. Mother, do something. But Victoria couldn't do anything. Not anymore. With her hands bound, she finally looked at me. For the first time, she seemed to truly see me. Not as an inconvenience. Not as an outsider. But as someone she had underestimated. I stared back at her unflinching. I had won. I wasn't weak. I wasn't beneath them. And I had made sure the world saw who they really were. I forced myself to sit up, my hand still cradling my belly, breathing through the pain. My babies were still safe. That was all that mattered. The officers led Victoria and Lauren toward the exit. The whispers in the ballroom grew louder. Someone in the back clapped. Then another. And another. By the time they were dragged through the doors, the applause filled the room. But I barely heard it, because as soon as they were gone, the paramedics rushed forward. One of them, a woman with kind eyes and a calm voice, crouched beside me. "Ma'am, we need to get you to the hospital. Can you stand?" I nodded weakly, gripping her offered hand as she and another medic gently helped me onto a stretcher. The last thing I saw before they wheeled me away was David Walker, the journalist, watching from a distance. He met my gaze. And this time, I was the one who nodded. He had helped me. Now it was time for me to make sure they never hurt anyone else again. The cold air hit my face as the paramedics wheeled me out of the grand ballroom and into the night. My body trembled, not from the weather, but from the sheer exhaustion, the pain, and the reality of what had just happened. The once celebratory atmosphere of the wedding was now a crime scene, and I was at its center. The flashing red and blue lights of the police cars illuminated the stone driveway. Guests stood outside, murmuring among themselves. Their elegant evening were now a stark contrast to the chaos that had unfolded. The paramedics worked quickly, securing me onto the stretcher inside the ambulance. One of them, a woman with sharp but kind eyes, leaned over me. "I'm Sarah. We're going to Massachusetts General. You're stable, but we need to monitor the babies. Have you felt any unusual cramping?" I struggled to focus. I don't know. Just pain. A lot of pain. She nodded, glancing at the monitor as another paramedic wrapped a blood pressure cuff around my arm. "That's normal after trauma like this. The important thing is that we get you checked immediately. Try to breathe deeply, okay?" "Breathe." I exhaled shakily, my hands instinctively pressing against my belly. The twins. Were they okay? The siren blared as the ambulance pulled away from the estate. My mind swirled with everything that had happened. The attack, the shock on the guests' faces, Victoria's arrogance turning to rage, the moment her wrists were bound in cold steel. She was gone. For the first time in months, I felt free. But my relief was overshadowed by one terrifying thought. What if the kick had harmed my babies? The paramedics continued speaking, but their voices blurred. I needed Ethan. I needed him now. With shaky fingers, I reached for my phone. I pressed his contact, and the phone rang. Once. Twice. 3 times. Then, "Nora?" His voice was groggy, but the moment he heard my breathing, he was fully alert. "Ethan," my voice cracked. "I'm in an ambulance." A beat of silence. Then, what happened? I swallowed the lump in my throat. Victoria. She kicked me. In the stomach. Right in front of everyone. The silence on the other end was deafening. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and dangerous. "She did what?" "David Walker called the police. She's been arrested. Lauren, too." Another pause. I could hear his breathing shift, heavy and uneven. "Are you okay?" I exhaled. "I don't know. I need you here. I'm getting on the next flight." There was no hesitation. "I'll be there first thing in the morning. Stay with the doctors. Don't worry about anything. I'll take care of this." I closed my eyes, letting his voice ground me. He was coming. The ambulance turned sharply, pulling into the hospital bay. The back doors swung open, and I was wheeled out into the fluorescent-lit emergency entrance. Doctors and nurses were waiting. "Mrs. Carter, we're going to check the babies now," one of them said, moving swiftly. I squeezed my phone tighter, feeling the warmth of Ethan's voice still lingering in my mind. "Please, let them be okay." I was wheeled down the corridor, my heart pounding with every passing second. Everything else, the wedding, the scandal, Victoria and Lauren's arrest, none of it mattered anymore. The only thing that mattered now was the 2 tiny lives inside me. The hospital room was quiet except for the soft beeping of the monitors and the occasional footsteps of nurses outside my door. I hadn't slept. I had tried, but every time I closed my eyes, I could still see Victoria's face, the cold, calculated expression right before she struck me. But more than that, I could feel the panic. The fear that had wrapped around my heart the moment I hit the floor, clutching my stomach, wondering if I had just lost my babies. The twins. A sharp knock on the door pulled me from my thoughts. A nurse stepped in, smiling softly. "Good news, Mrs. Carter. The doctor just finished reviewing your scans and would like to speak with you." I nodded weakly, shifting slightly in the hospital bed. My entire body ached. Moments later, Dr. Patel, the obstetrician, entered the room. He was a middle-aged man with kind eyes, holding a tablet in his hands. "Nora," he said, sitting beside me, "I won't keep you waiting any longer. We ran a full ultrasound and fetal monitoring test, and I'm relieved to tell you that your babies are both safe." The breath I had been holding in finally released. They were safe. Tears stung my eyes, a mixture of exhaustion, relief, and the overwhelming weight of the past 24 hours crashing into me. "Thank you," I whispered. Dr. Patel gave me a reassuring smile. "That being said, you need to be extremely careful for the remainder of your pregnancy. The stress and trauma could have caused complications, and while there's no immediate danger, we want to avoid any premature labor risks." I nodded. "I'll do whatever I need to. Just tell me how to protect them." He patted my hand gently. "Rest, hydration, and no stress. Which means no more dealing with toxic people like the ones who put you here in the first place." I let out a soft laugh, dry, exhausted, but real. The doctor gave me one final reassuring glance before standing up. "A nurse will be in shortly to check your vitals. Try to rest, okay?" I tried. But the moment he left, my mind wandered again. Ethan. I needed him here. I needed him more than I ever had before. And as if the universe had heard me, the door swung open. I barely had time to react before Ethan rushed in, eyes frantic, breathing heavy as if he had run the entire way from the airport. "Nora." The sound of his voice, the sheer relief in it, shattered something inside me. I broke. Tears spilled down my face as I tried to sit up, but before I could move, he was there. His arms wrapped around me, warm, strong, shaking. I pressed my face into his chest, inhaling deeply. He smelled like home. "I'm here," he murmured, his voice raw. "I'm here, baby. I'm so sorry. I should have been here." I shook my head, my fingers gripping his shirt. "She kicked me, Ethan." My voice cracked. "She kicked me and she laughed." His entire body tensed against mine. His breathing was controlled, but I could feel the fury beneath it. "She's never going to hurt you again," he promised, his voice low, dangerous. "I swear it, Nora. She's done." I pulled back just enough to look into his eyes. "They're okay?" I whispered. "The babies. They're okay." His breath caught, and for a moment, I saw something break in him too. Relief. Grief. Rage. His hand trembled as he placed it gently over my stomach. "I was so scared," he admitted. "I thought I was going to lose all of you." I covered his hand with mine. "We're still here." He exhaled, pressing his forehead against mine. "And I won't let them get away with this." His words sent a shiver through me, not from fear, but from certainty. Ethan wasn't just my husband. He was my protector. And now he was ready to fight. The next few days passed in a blur. Hospital visits. Medical tests. Ethan barely leaving my side. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the ballroom, the glint in Victoria's eyes before she struck me. But something had shifted. For the first time, she wasn't the one in control anymore. The morning after Ethan arrived, the police officers handling the case, Detective Ryan Collins and Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell, came to the hospital to take my official statement. Ethan sat beside me the entire time, his hand clasped around mine. "Victoria and Lauren Carter have been officially charged with aggravated assault, battery, and endangering an unborn child," Collins explained, flipping through his case notes. "We also have additional evidence of long-term psychological abuse, thanks to witness testimonies from employees and guests at the wedding." Lauren's face flashed in my mind. The way she had laughed while I lay on the floor, clutching my belly. She deserved this. They both did. "What about David Walker's recording?" Ethan asked, his tone sharp. Lieutenant Mitchell nodded. His video is a crucial piece of evidence. Between that, the witness statements, and your medical reports, we have a strong case. The trial will move forward within the next month. I let out a slow breath. A trial. A real chance at justice. But what the detective said next was even more shocking. There's more, Collins continued. Once news of Victoria's arrest spread, former employees of the Carter family began coming forward. Housekeepers, personal assistants, even former charity workers from Victoria's foundation. Ethan stiffened. What do you mean? Mitchell handed him a folder. Financial fraud, tax evasion, employee mistreatment. And that's just the beginning. I swallowed. She's been hurting people for years, hasn't she? Collins gave me a grim nod. And she thought no one would ever stand up to her. Until now. A slow, deep realization settled in my chest. Victoria didn't just hurt me. She hurt everyone she could control. And now, all of her secrets were finally unraveling. The courtroom was packed. Reporters, lawyers, strangers who had been affected by Victoria's actions. And me. I sat beside Ethan, my baby bump now more pronounced, my heart racing as the judge entered. Victoria and Lauren sat at the defense table, looking nothing like the powerful women they once were. Gone were the designer dresses and the air of invincibility. They were just criminals now. When the trial began, the evidence was damning. David Walker's video was played for the jury. The room was silent as the screen showed Victoria kicking me, Lauren laughing. The look of pure cruelty on their faces. Then came the witness testimonies, housekeepers describing years of mistreatment, former charity workers exposing fraud. The final blow was when the prosecutor presented bank statements and offshore accounts, proving Victoria had stolen millions from her own foundation. By the time the trial neared its end, the jury had already made up their minds. Victoria sat stone-faced as the judge read the verdict. Victoria Carter, you are sentenced to 15 years in prison. Lauren Carter, 7 years. Lauren let out a strangled sob. Victoria? She didn't react. Not even once. But I knew this was the moment she had lost everything. She had spent her life building a kingdom of power, and now it had all come crashing down. Ethan squeezed my hand. It's over, Nora. I exhaled. For the first time in months, I felt truly free. The trial was over. Justice had been served. Victoria Carter, the woman who had spent her entire life controlling and destroying others, was now nothing more than an inmate. Lauren, her ever-loyal shadow, would spend the next 7 years behind bars. Their power, their wealth, none of it had saved them. But I had won. I was finally free. And just in time. Because only a few weeks later, I went into labor. Breathe, Nora. You're doing great. Ethan's voice was steady, but I could hear the emotion beneath it. He was right next to me, holding my hand, his grip strong and reassuring. I had prepared for this moment, but nothing could have truly prepared me for the sheer pain, exhaustion, and overwhelming rush of emotion. I was about to meet our babies. One more push, the doctor instructed. You're almost there. I clenched Ethan's hand and gave it everything I had. A sharp cry filled the room. My body sagged in relief as the first baby was born. It's a girl, the doctor announced. Tears streamed down my face as I heard my daughter's cries. She's perfect, Ethan whispered, his voice thick with emotion as the nurse placed her in his arms. I barely had time to recover before the contractions started again. The second twin was coming. Minutes later, another cry. It's a boy. I let out a shaky laugh, pure joy flooding my chest as I watched Ethan hold our son for the first time. 2 perfect, tiny souls. Our children. Ethan kissed my forehead, his tears mixing with mine. We did it, I whispered. He nodded, his voice breaking. Yeah, baby. We did. A week later, we finally brought them home. The nursery we had spent months preparing was filled with sunlight, soft blankets, and a love so deep it felt endless. As I rocked our daughter in my arms, Ethan cradled our son beside me. What should we name them? I asked softly. Ethan smiled down at them. How about Ava and Lucas? I looked at their tiny faces, Ava, with her father's strong features, and Lucas, with my deep brown eyes. Ava and Lucas Carter, I whispered, nodding. Perfect. Ethan pressed a gentle kiss against my forehead. They'll never know the kind of pain you went through, Nora. They'll never feel unwanted or unloved. I promise you that. I reached for his hand, intertwining my fingers with his. Because they have us. He smiled. Because they have you. As I gazed at our children, I realized something. The past no longer mattered. Victoria Carter had spent her life trying to control everything and everyone around her, and in the end, it had destroyed her. She had lost everything. But me? I had gained everything that truly mattered. A husband who loved me. Children who would grow up in a home full of warmth and kindness. A future free from fear. The world outside our nursery was changing, the seasons shifting, new beginnings on the horizon. And as the sun set outside our window, I held Ava and Lucas close, listening to their soft breaths. For the first time in a long time, I knew we were finally safe. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, leave a comment, and subscribe for more. Your support means a lot and helps bring more stories to life. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. What was your favorite part of the story? We'd love to hear from you. Stay strong, stay hopeful, and remember, you are never alone. See you in the next story.